continuing with our terminology crash course, what we have here, that's first of all, on the offensive side of things, there are different types of security elements that comprise security postures, right? So let's say we have an application, an online banking application, for example. That's a very simple and well understood example. Okay, so for that we have different threats. No matter whether the creators and operators of this application relate somehow to these threats, they exist. They are very potential, but still they are somewhere, and they may potentially harm the application. So for example, black hat hackers, they exist no matter what application owners think about them, right? And the guys who choose to attack this application, they become threat agents. Okay, so they imply this threat upon the object, upon the application. In order to do that efficiently, they have to find vulnerability. Okay, so if malicious hacking is a threat and malicious hacker, black hat hacker, is the threat agent, he cannot just come and break things. Okay, so he cannot break into a system just because he wants to. He has to find a vulnerability that is related to this threat. For example, existing technical vulnerability in the filtering user input can allow breaking into the backend and dumping the database. Yeah, there is a whole class of web application vulnerabilities, SQL injections, and if the application does not correctly process user input, it can be broken into. Okay, so in this situation, this vulnerability is exploited by the threat agent. Okay, another weakness in an application, another type of weakness, is called flaw, and is different from vulnerability in terms of the level of abstraction, right? So let's say we have a plan, right? We build a plan how to create a secure system, and if we do not, for example, provide an authentication mechanism for a system that does contain sensitive information, confidential or private information, we introduce a flaw. Okay, so at some point we have made a wrong design decision. Yeah, so we just on a principle level did not employ a method for providing system security. But if we have decided to introduce this authentication mechanism, but while implementing it we have introduced a technical error, yeah, so misconfiguration or this lack of user input filtering and protection from putting special characters into user input, we have introduced a vulnerability, and in this way we can create a situation when our authentication process can be completely circumvented, right? Issue is just a fancy way to generalize over flaws and vulnerabilities. So whenever we have something that can decrease security level of a system, we call it issue. It's a very auditor type of word. What is exploit? Exploit, it's either an automated or manual way to take advantage of a vulnerability. Okay, so threat agents use exploits in order to exploit vulnerabilities. That's what happens when they hack things. Okay, so say you are an ethical hacker and you have permission from the system owner to find vulnerabilities and then validate them and then exploit them. Everything what happens can be automated, and in this way you create exploit code. What is attack? Attack is another high-level term that is defined as threats basically becoming actual to the target through exploiting a vulnerability. Let's put it like that. So attack is an act, right, of threats actualizing for the system in forms of exploits, taking advantages of vulnerabilities. So in order to attack, for attack to happen, we have to have a threat. We have to have a threat agent if this attack is intentional, right? We have to have a vulnerability in the system that is related to this threat, and we have to to either use or not the exploit, because we can automate it, or we can do things manually, which is deemed more professional hacking community. Okay, so what is the risk? The risk is a product of two values. Yeah, so risk is a combined value of probability and impact. We take probability in terms of like actual mathematical probability. That's the value from 0 to 1, which is never 0 or 1, right? And we multiply it with the impact that an actual attack can cause, right? So the effectiveness of a certain threat is measured in this risk value, which is a product of probability and impact. This is essential in order to understand how we further act in order to make our stuff more secure, which we will discuss shortly. Okay, so incident is actually bad things happening to us. So when attack happens or when anything goes wrong in terms of security, we have an incident. So incident is normally indicated by the number, the series of security events, like someone is trying to brute force into the system. We see that in the logs, multiple attempts, multiple failed attempts to authenticate to the system, and then suddenly this all stops, right? And we have from the same source with the same user agent, for example, in the browser, we have a successful login attempt, which is a clear indication of security incident happening right now. Then we have positive things that affect the security posture, right? We have countermeasures or controls, which can be of three basic types. They can be either physical or logical or organizational. Yeah, so this physical or logical, also known as technical, and the organizational controls, they are aimed at lowering the risk. Okay, so they do either decrease the probability of incident happening, or they limit the impact, or they do both to some extent. Okay, so the countermeasure or control is a way to limit the risk, to lower the risk. There are also either things you can do with risk. You can, for example, you can transfer the risk, right? You can just redirect all the losses to your insurance company if they will to sell you a product. Or you can just avoid the risk. For example, patching or applying security update to a technical vulnerability basically lets you remove the risk altogether. There are certainly some other vulnerabilities, but the risk associated with this very vulnerability is removed. Okay, and of course you can just accept it. There are risks that are either very rare, so the probability is low, or they are very limited in impact, so you can just live with it for some time or forever.